Hello book lovers and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins and today I'm talking to author Sharon E. Flowers. Dr. Flowers released Purposeful Pathways, her first journal book, in July 2018. She is currently working on a new book, Taken But Not Forsaken, which focuses on the psychological struggles of trauma and healing using biblical principles. She is the Director of Christian Education at Love Alive Church in Middleburg, Florida. Today I'll be talking about Purposeful Pathways. Hi Sharon, first of all, welcome and thank you for coming on Book Talk Radio Club.
Thank you for having me, Claire.
Oh, my pleasure. Part of your book blurb on Amazon says, Purposeful Pathways is a guide for your life. I want you to see that if I can do it, you can too. Each story is an accurate account of my life, the good and the bad, and I pray that it serves to empower and inspire you to do whatever it takes to live your best life. Sharon, why did you decide to use experiences from your own life in the book?
Well, Claire, I wanted people to really be able to connect with someone who's being very transparent and very honest about their experiences. What I find generally is that people normally, they will talk, but they won't share their personal experiences. And so people cannot connect to that. So I wanted to be as transparent, share my real life personal experiences so that they know that there's others out there that have suffered or went through some of the same issues and were able to overcome and be inspired and encouraged through the process.
Yeah, it tends to start creating a relationship between you, the author, and the reader, and you have no idea who's reading your books, but a relationship starts and the reader empathizes.
Yes.
As a child, you experienced a shortage of food and lights and water being shut off because your mum couldn't afford to pay the bills. You dreamed of living in a nice house, having the food in the refrigerator, lights and water. I know you say these dreams were very important, although you didn't realise it at the time. Why were they so important?
Well, first of all, Claire, let me say this, too, about my mom. My mom was a phenomenal mother, and I believe that she did the best that she could with what she had to deal with.
Sure.
And so she was a single parent with 4 children, and so things were tight financially. I can't say, we always had a roof over our heads, so we were never without a home. But there was sometimes where there was, food ran out, we didn't always have what we wanted to eat.
Yeah.
And so for me, my dream initially began to be, I just want to be able to not run out of food, not have the lights cut off, not have the water shut off.
Sure.
But just to have my basic needs met. And so that was the beginning, for me of a dream. And so that's why it was so important for me not only to have those things, but also to leave a legacy, to do something different so that, when my generation or my children came along, that would not be the case.
Our lives are a journey, aren't they? And like most of us, your journey has had some bumps along the way. Hard childhood, divorce, time spent in a mental ward. Yet despite these bumps, you have a fierce faith in God. You believe it is God's way of getting our attention. Can you explain that, please?
So what I will say is this, in life there are things that are just going to happen. They are not because they're caused by God. It's just life. And so I do believe that in those darkest moments or when you're faced with those trials and it just seems like there's so much uncertainty, I think our focus has a tendency to shift towards to God, and can really authentically focus on what He would want us to do and how we should proceed. And so I believe that in our darkest moments, we look to something higher than ourselves, and for me, it is Christ.
It's a good answer. You say your journey started when you joined the army. Why then?
Well, as an adult, I was an adult. I was 19 at that particular time. I was able to make my own decisions. It was up to me. And so at that particular point, there were some choices in life that I needed to make. I can't say that they were all good, but I can't say that they were all bad. And so my journey started as an adult at 19 years old when I left for the Army.
Each chapter of Purposeful Pathways is divided into life lessons. And the first life lesson is start your journey, and part of that chapter is the angel encounter. Tell me about that.
So the angel encounter is a story that is true. Some people find it difficult to believe, But I had been going through a really rough season in my life, and I decided at this particular point that I just didn't want to live anymore, that life was just not worth living. And so I was stationed in Georgia at the time, Fort Stewart, Georgia. And so I decided that I was going to go to Korea, and while I was in Korea, that I would, commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had everything planned out, and this particular day that I decided that I was going to commit suicide, I remember going to my barracks room where I lived in Korea, and I said, well, I'm just going to take a few minutes and I'm going to lay across the bed. And, I said, I'll take a little nap, and once I get up, then I'll do what I'll do.
Mm.
And so as I laid across that bed, I can't say that I was in a deep sleep, or I really don't even understand the state that I was in. But I just really remember something, and I call it an angel, that came and it wrapped its arms around me. And I felt so much love and so much compassion in that moment. And then it just whispered, I love you.
Oh.
And when I jumped up out the bed, I looked around the room and I was like, oh my God, there's nobody here.
Mm.
But I went to call my grandmother and tell her about the experience that I just had. And she told me that she had been praying for me because she knew that I wasn't doing well. And said that she asked God to send an angel to comfort me. And that's the story of how that angel encounter came about. And as you know, I did not commit suicide because I'm here today.
Sure.
And it changed my whole mindset, and I had a whole shift in my thinking after that.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, that you can go through life and you can be miserable or whatever else is causing the problems, and then there's something that does cause a huge shift. I think that happens with so many people.
Yes, it does. And that was one reason for me wanting to share that story, to let people know that, God is ever present and He's always here to help us. Sometimes we just fail to look, for the source of the help.
Absolutely, absolutely. Life lesson number 5 is titled, Those You Need to Forgive. Forgiveness. That can be very hard to do. Many people would say, well, that would mean me forgetting what the person has done to me. How important to you is forgiveness along one's life journey?
Well, I think forgiveness is so important for anyone, especially, for the reason because if you hold unforgiveness in your heart, it causes you to become bitter. It hinders your relationships with others. It could hinder your personal relationship with your significant other. And the person who you're angry with may not even have an idea that you're still angry with them.
Yeah.
So unforgiveness causes you more harm than it does good. And so when you forgive, it doesn't mean that you forget. It's just that you've decided that this is not worth to be keeping my mind entangled and wrapped around. I would just rather forgive you, pray for you, and move on with life.
Yeah, exactly. And if you keep regret and you don't forgive, I mean, not only does it affect your relationships, it also affects you physically, because it starts making you ill, because you're just living with this huge ball of anger, hate, whatever.
Yes, and it goes from unforgiveness, it goes to hate, it goes to bitterness, it goes to anger, and so it has such a negative down spiral that the person can't even see the great life that they have in front of them.
Life lesson number 9, the life God has for you. Is this one's life purpose? People search the whole, life for their life purpose.
Well, yeah, so from a biblical viewpoint, I do believe that our first purpose is to serve God wholeheartedly. But I do believe that in our serving and in our living of life, we can truly find what we're passionate about. And then we can move in directions to live life in purpose and on purpose. So sometimes we forget that, there's other things that we, or other people that we're supposed to help. At one time for me, women, and still is to a certain degree, but it has shifted. Women was a great ministry for me, and where I did a lot of teaching and I did a lot of counseling. Well, now I'm working in a different aspect with women, with teaching resume writing and professional dress and helping them transition back into life after, they've been in a battered woman's shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe that God teaches us how to live in purpose and how to live on purpose.
Purposeful Pathways is a journal book. Why did you decide to make it a journal as well?
Well, I decided to make it a journal book because, I think about all of the self-help books that I've read over the years, and I read them, and then there was no change. And so I wanted people to be able to interact with the book. I wanted them to be able to write down where they needed help at. I wanted them to think about the questions that I asked and then come up with a plan. And not only come up with a plan, but to execute that plan. And so I decided to make it a journal book because I wanted something that a person can go back and reflect on. So they can pick up this book anytime and say, okay, this is where I'm at in my journey. What did I write down? It is a constant reminder. So I decided to make it a journal book for that specific reason.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Who is your target audience then?
So I've had men and women to read this book, and of course, more women definitely connect with the book, but the most inspiring thing to me is the number of men who have contacted me and told me, hey, thank you for writing this book, because in many ways, even though your target audience may be women, I have found myself in areas of this book that I can relate to.
Right. Why the title Purposeful Pathways?
Well, despite all of the, what I say unpleasant things or, bad things that has happened in my life, I do believe those things have made me a better person. I'm able to value people more. I'm able to love more deeply. I value the relationships that I build with people. And so I do believe that it was purposeful in my growth at that particular time. And I'm still growing. So even despite all of that, it was my pathway and it was purposeful.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have a eureka moment and then stop growing. You just grow and grow and grow. It keeps going, doesn't it? It's a journey. It's as simple as that.
It is simple as that. It is a journey, and it's our pathway.
Is there a particular author or book that inspired you to write Purposeful Pathways?
Well, there's a couple of authors that I know, and one of them is Aretha Green. She was actually the person who inspired me to write this book. She's the author of Butterfly Blessings, and so this was the initial start for me. I started writing for a magazine that she's the editor for, and I would just do little short clips, and she was like, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. And so Aretha Green was definitely one that had a huge impact in this particular project. And also to another dear friend of mine, her name is Lenore Dawson Lassiter, and she's the author of Sister Pour Into Me. And I did not know at that particular time, we worked together many years ago, and she was actually writing a book, which was a journal book, and our books were released around the same time. And but she has been such a huge blessing in my life. So I would say those two authors have truly inspired me.
You've received some wonderful feedback for Purposeful Pathways, including a very inspirational book. And Purposeful Pathways is a powerful, moving book. It opens you up to life struggles and helps you to deal with them. Tell me, what was the best moment for you, Sharon? The first review or the first sale, and why?
So I can't really say the first review or the first sale, and I'll tell you why. Because, of course, people go out there and they put reviews, and which is wonderful. I love the reviews. But for me, the best moment for me was I had a lady who was 65 years old, and she sent me this email, and she was telling me how that she was sexually molested by her uncle when she was 10 years old, and that she had never told anybody, and that she had always felt guilt, and she struggled with depression, and she was telling me that even in her relationship with her husband, there was a lot of struggles because he just did not understand.
Sure.
And that reading that book and me being so transparent allowed her to share her story, to tell her story, and then be freed of that guilt and shame that she felt for 55 years. Well, that was the best moment because the purpose of this book was to inspire change, and that just let me know that I did what I was supposed to do.
Well, that's wonderful. Good for you. Good for you. I mean, if you can help just one person, It's always wonderful. So you're working on your next book, Taken but Not Forsaken. Would you like to tell me a little bit about it and when you expect to publish?
Yes. So Taken but Not Forsaken is going to focus a little bit on the psychological struggles with trauma and using biblical principles, but also more on grief. To talk about the processes of grief. And what we go through in that it's not on a continent. It just doesn't go step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But also to how to process that when we face life struggles.
Right.
And so Taken but Not Forsaken will focus, pretty much on that. My goal right now is to have this book released late summer next year.
Right.
And so I'm really hoping that I could really, put a lot of focus and energy into it at the end of this year so that I could get it published by the end of summer next year.
And lastly, where can Book Talk Radio Club listeners purchase Purposeful Pathways?
So Purposeful Pathways is available on Amazon. And of course, most of the, bigger bookstores here, Barnes & Noble, Books of Millions. But also, too, if people want a personalized signed copy, if they contact me on Instagram at SCFlowers, or they can contact me on Facebook at Dr. Sharon E. Flower, author, or they can email me, scflowers@icloud.com, and I will actually invoice them, and I will personally sign up the book, and I will drop it in the mail.
All right. Well, lovely. Thank you, Sharon. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club again. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Thank you very much, Sharon.